Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. In this video, folks, just want to check in, and we're going to talk a little bit about not fearing the chaos. I know there's so much going on in the world. Doesn't matter if it's political, geopolitical, uh, you know, dealing with food, dealing with jobs, dealing with conflicts overseas, dealing with conflicts within the United States, dealing with a lot going on, right? Some people are looking up, going, is something coming in on us, or what's about to happen? There are a lot of just big ticket items going on right now. And what's easy to see and understand is that because of all of this, it can kind of whip up, our subconscious, kind of the underlying energy, us, right? And it can create a little anxiety. It can create some fears. It can create some question marks, right? And the main thing I want to say is don't fear the chaos. And I'm going to explain why. Now, I can say that, but each of us has to deal with crossing the bridge of, fear, right? Getting to the other side. And anybody from the outside says, well, don't be afraid, blah, blah, blah. It's like somebody goes skydiving or something, right? It's like, well, don't be afraid, whatever. It's like you can say that all day long. It's up to each of us to deal with the fear, right? It doesn't really matter. The person 3 inches to the left or to the right of you may be panicky and afraid of one thing while you're concerned about another and somebody and so on and so on. See? And this creates kind of a frequency, if you will, right? It creates an amplitude. And it's not a good amplitude because it pulls things down. And then it also makes us doubt, right? Makes us doubt and overreact, potentially overreact, right? But it can be that fight, flight, or freeze too, where we don't react at all, right? Or we're frozen from reacting. I guess is the appropriate way to explain that. The freeze, right? You're frozen from reacting, right? So overreact, or you run away, run away and hide, whatever, right? And you see this played out depending on what subject you're talking about based on people's actions, right? And it's obvious to understand why people would have fear. If our food sources are being, contaminated, follow some of the news, do a little research. Food sources X, Y, and Z, and legislation to go in here, it feels like, if you look at it with an eye squinted, that there's a boxing in of people. Your freedom is being boxed in, right? Be it through controls, through legislative type things, whether it be through, some corporate entities doing certain things that aren't good and or healthy for humans, right? And you start adding it all up, and it can feel a little bit like, people are being boxed in. So it's perfectly understandable to understand why there would be fear. Okay, so the fear and the reason is probably as legitimate as it ever can be. But let me tell you why you shouldn't fear it. Because for each side of those, we'll say these panels, it doesn't have to be a perfect box. We'll say it's it could be an octagon, whatever it is, right? But for every panel, from every facet of life, for folks to try to box people in, it requires them to do something, right? Especially those who are trying to control. They have to expend energy to maintain that control. So when they're doing this, right, in some cases they're doing this, in some cases they're completely, unaware and, that sort of thing. But for the most part, for those, entities out there that are doing things, right, to kind of box people in, to limit their freedoms, limit their ability and capability at any stage or any of that. It takes energy. And for them to expend that energy or to hold up that panel, right? Figuratively speaking, think of it this visually. They in their groups, right? They have to hold up this panel. But it also requires that others also hold up a panel. Okay? But here's the kicker. Those panels can't be held up on their own. They require, their attentiveness, right? And in their attentiveness, there becomes evidence of their tampering with people's lives, freedoms, and so forth. Okay? So it becomes, and this is why I want to say, don't fear the chaos. The perceived chaos, all the small wildfires of life, and broader cultures, right, all over the globe, is that they're revealing, okay? They're playing poker, right? They may have a really good hand, but their hand is totally tipped. Why? Because they can't hold those cards up. They can't hold those panels up, okay? They can't hold those in place without there being evidence and tracks and so on and so forth, okay? The kicker is, though, is they hold up one panel and they look to see who reacts to that. And then maybe another scenario, another panel is held up. Oh, well, who reacts to that? Now, another reason, and by doing that, they can test to see if us human beings are paying attention. But what they don't understand is those things become watershed moments, right? Watershed moments where the water eventually fills up to, and that bucket in it will no longer hold. Okay. So, but they don't know where that watershed moment is. They don't really truly understand where that lip of that bucket is. So while they can experiment, now here's the other scenario, and I know I'm speaking in very general terms, and you kind of have to in some of these scenarios, right? If you're tapped in and you're paying attention to the world, then you understand what I'm talking about. If you're not, do a little bit of, a little research, a little digging through the news and digging through some of the things going on in the world, and you understand exactly what I'm talking about. So there's a revealing. They can't hide it. They can't hide any of their activities. They're all being exposed, right? But there's also a testing to see if anybody's going to react and do anything about it and pursue anyone, for, say, justice or accountability or all the things, right? And so there's an observation. Now, while this is also going on dualistically, there's one thing they cannot separate themselves from. The energy of monetary gain. They cannot lose their ability to what? Have monetary gains and or, overflow of monetary abundance, right? They don't want to just be like slightly better. They want to be, a ridiculous amount better. And because of that greed, two things. They're holding up these panels, trying to box people in through legislation, rules, all these things, right? All little backdoor conversations and gimmickry and everything. They're doing that, but they're exposing themselves. And they also want to make a whole bunch of money, so they start doing economic things, right? But the challenge here is that too is a watershed situation, because we only have a finite, job's only going to pay, most people, early in their career till senior in the career. It doesn't matter where you are. There's a bandwidth there, okay? There's a saturation point where people can't survive beyond a certain place, okay? And now some conspiracy, and I'm fine with saying the word conspiracies. Theorists, we'll just say theorists, think that they're trying to provoke people into some kind of corner, right? Well, try to box people in, starve them out, right, to where they can't survive. Now, when they're trying to take care of their kids and they're trying to get through life, as this amplitude picks up, you're getting more fearful, all these things, even if it's subtle. That's also affecting your health, okay? So what's the exercise in talking about this? The exercise in talking about this is that the thing that you control is your reaction to what's going on, okay? So two things. Don't panic, don't fear. Let them keep exposing their, showing us their cards, okay? Because as cards get shown more and more and more and more, then it becomes very clear, right? Then methodically, when whether it's a voting scenario or whether it's, you're peacefully protesting or whatever your modality is, okay? Maybe you have your own YouTube channel. Maybe you have whatever you do, right? Maybe you write, whatever it is. But observe, because the evidence is pouring in like a waterfall. I mean, they're literally not even trying to hide most things now because I think they believe that nobody's paying attention. That people are so rooted, say, to their politics or to their this or to their that they don't want to sacrifice. And there is some truth to that. If we're attached too intensely to our materialistic, egoic side, then yes, you're going to ride your raft right over their waterfall. And that's the waterfall they want you to go over, because if you're afraid, you're going to lose this or that or whatever, if you're afraid about losing things, okay, then they have you, there's another panel of that boxing in, your psyche, if you will. Again, how do you combat this? First, you got to be detached, folks. I don't care if you're the wealthiest person on the planet or, destitute. Don't even care. Here's one fact that applies to everyone. No one here owns anything. Life is temporary. We are all renters. Even when you think you own something, you're renting, okay? It's long term maybe, but you're renting. And the more you understand that you're renting and that life is, that there's a temporal aspect to this experience, then what? You find more joy in your connections and in the journey, right? Which we've talked before in other videos. But if you become too attached, if you were thinking, oh, this is all going to be forever, right? I'm going to own this home forever. No, that home's going to fall apart in less than forever. Okay. That car is going to break down in less than forever. X, Y, and Z are not going to outlast, a very long time. Okay. So, but just as a mental exercise, this isn't to say throw your things away or give everything away. That's on you. You live your own life. But it is to say that your mind and your heart need to be detached from it, because they're using that as leverage, right? Your fear of loss as leverage to maintain status quo, right? Now, when I say status quo, I'm not talking about, hey, we all stop at the stop signs, we all drive on the appropriate side of the road for safety's sake. I'm talking the encroachments, the above and beyond, the things that are limiting people's freedoms, right? Those are the things you have to be aware of, because more and more those things are going to get stripped away. And if I'm telling you, folks, if you're materially attached to this experience of life to such an extent that you can and think about it, you're being bought. You think you're being bought, but you're actually being sold. You're being sold notions and belief systems and paradigms that are attaching your psyche to materialistic things. And what? The potential loss of those things creates anxiety and fear and, oh my gosh, and this and that. And even to the extent that you can, rationalize not having some things, some excess things, right? Fine. But folks, I'm telling you, the more you start peeling into that onion, what you start to realize is that, it's your health as well. It's the quality of food, the purity of water. It is all of these important things, right? Now, Now we talk about this, don't be afraid. And I'm bringing up things that may make you, you may go, oh my gosh, I wasn't afraid, but now I'm afraid. No, you're okay, right? You're okay. The point here, folks, is just be cool. Be cool. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. Observe. Because people who are trying to be nefarious and try to manipulate individuals or entire cultures or small groups, communities, you name it, they can't help themselves. They are greedy and they will always overstep, and in the overstepping reveal to us their true intentions. And their true intentions are usually to take advantage and to thwart and to hurt and harm and all those things underneath it all, right? So we have to be discerning to see that, they might be trying to sell us a bill of goods that, hey, this is all great and fantastic and da 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 da. Now, that being said, not every single entity out there is nefarious and manipulative, okay? We don't want to become paranoid. This is another reason we don't need to fear, okay? To be afraid of the chaos, right? The chaos is for us, believe it or not. The chaos is to reveal to us those who are being manipulative and nefarious. We don't have to go looking too hard. They, again, will become so greedy and so assured that they will never be discovered, that they will eventually, at some point, they will trip over their own feet and the truth will be laid bare, okay? And that's the revealing. You don't have to peel that onion back. It will literally peel itself. The ego and pride. Because deep down, even the nefarious and manipulative, they want to be caught, okay? They want to be, have themselves revealed. Why? Because the reason they're doing it is the same reason I'm telling you don't fear the chaos. They're afraid. And the only reaction they have to their fears is to do these over manipulative things. That is them revealing to us that they are afraid, okay? So what we can't do is become afraid, okay? So put that up. And I know that, and I'm not saying you can never have moments. We're human beings. We're going to have moments, right? But don't reside in the pool of fear, okay? Get out of that pool. Go wash that off. And remain at peace. Even, steady Eddie, right? Right down the middle. The middle path, right? That's the razor's edge, right? So if you come from any belief system at all, throw away the dogmas and the controls and remember that the truest message right down the middle is what? Love your neighbor as yourself. Because those who don't will be revealed in not doing so. Okay? This is the easiest way to not understand who the manipulators are out there, folks. Is that they cannot help themselves. They cannot love their neighbor. There are limits to them loving their neighbor. Now, if you're watching this and say, well, I don't like so-and-so and I don't like so-and-so, well, that's a bridge you're going to have to cross, right? Because if you have limits, then you're clearly not living up to your own faith. That's just a fact. That's just the way it goes, folks. I'm sorry. I didn't make up your rules. You made them up. And there you go, okay? Is if you want to live up to your own ideals, it'll be obvious in how you treat your neighbor, okay? And if you don't love thy neighbor as yourself, then it's going to be revealed. So you only have one real option. Just own your hate. Just own it straight out. And instead of being all in the shadows, be out front. Because then peaceful people can say, aha, now we know who you are. And now we can, deal appropriately with those people, right? And definitely put boundaries around them, okay? So, and let justness follow those situations, right? Never take justice into our own hands, right? Vengeance is not ours, okay, folks? Remember, we don't want to become that darkness, we don't want to become the fear. We don't want to be instruments of fear in other people's lives, okay? We want to be the opposite of that. Love, safety, acceptance, growth, right? thriving lives, all the things that you want, all the things that will be proven out throughout all eternity, okay? Those things will live forever. The darkness will be beat back, okay? So, kind of like the video I did a few videos ago, it really is about choose your adventure, choose your adventure, which, light or dark, are you going to take the shadow road or are you going to be in the light? You really got to pick which one you're part of, right? And then watch, because the darkness, again, can't help but expose itself, because for it to grow and thrive, it has to be the, cross-eyed bull in a china shop, breaking and busting and falling over itself and acting stupid, okay? And that's the revealing. And this is another reason why we shouldn't fear it, because they're literally handing us the data, handing us the evidence, handing us the X, the Y, and the Z. Because in the end, we go through these periods every so often. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the last World War or, in different segments in history. There'll be a recap, and there will be a scorecard read to see who was actually doing harm in the worst ways to people. And then, justice will follow that, right? So just a quick video today talking about don't fear the chaos. Chaos is revealing to us what the nefarious are up to, okay? So don't fear it. Let them, and that's because they're afraid. And then the more they do it, they'll implode on themselves. And then some of them will reset, and some of them will come over to the good side, the light side, right? Not the dark, nefarious side, but the good, the hopeful, the loving, the accepting, the all-time, right? The winning side, right? That's where love resides, on the winning side. All right, folks, hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When we do this, not only helping to transform culture, but we're transforming our own life. But don't forget, we can't transform anything on the outside if we're not willing to transform on the inside. So important. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.